Okay, I'm back. We're going to use the Bible. We're going to learn about God. Now, what I'd like to do is introduce you to um, the different gods that people worship. One is YHWH, Yahweh. Sometimes his name is Jehovah. But Yahweh is the God of the Jews. The God of Islam is Allah. Now, if we were studying Allah, I would have my copy of the Quran, and I would be teaching you from the Quran about the attributes, the characteristics of Allah, going into the possibilities of how it is that the Quran has come to be revered by so many people. Now, I'm going to show you a book that I would suggest that if you're needing to think about, the Bible, there's this book, hold it up. I would recommend that you get this. It's not a long read. And How We Got the Bible by Neil Lightfoot is going to give you some good, solid information about why we have the Bible that we have. Yahweh and Allah. Now, we got Jesus. Jesus is God. This is a point of doctrinal dispute among a lot of Christian sects, sects. But the Bible, and I will show you why the Bible teaches that he is God. That's down the road. But the thing is, the next section that I wanted to talk about, the next R, is relationship. Relationship is so important because if in fact you have a relationship with God, then you are his child. If you do not have a personal relationship with God, you're not his child. And you know it. I knew when I believed in reincarnation that I was not in a relationship with God because the God of Hinduism, the God of reincarnation, is not a personal God. It's like the Force in Star Wars. God in these kinds of religions, God is throughout creation. God is in that chair over there. God is in the air. God is in this planet. There's a lot of paganism in our culture right now because there's a lot of people that have this kind of belief in God. And Christianity teaches that God is a personal God. The relationship. Now, how do you become a child of God? Is a very important question that you have to answer. The Muslims who worship Allah, Muslims do not have a choice when it comes to following Allah. If your father is a Muslim, you are, by definition, born Muslim. You are Muslim. The penalty for wanting to leave Islam is death. So you're born. That's what they call the relationship with Allah. Not a choice. It's by birth. Now, Jews Jews are the opposite. If your mother is Jewish and you're born into this relationship with God through Yahweh, you are Jewish. It doesn't matter what religion you practice. You are Jewish if your mother is Jewish. Now, this is the opposite of Islam. Right now, Islam is at the throat of Judaism. Judaism has control of the Holy Land. They're not going to give it up. It was given to them by Yahweh in ancient times. Now they've got it. They will fight to the death to live and stay in the promised land. And you can see why this difficulty, people like to think that this is solvable. It's not. It's just going to continue until one destroys the other. That's the way it is. And I hear the politicians talk about, well, we can get them to live together. Yes, they could, but they're not going to. And I'll go into greater detail of what the problem is between Jews and the Muslim world, but that's down the road. Now, the relationship with God began at creation. A lot of people, and I was one of them, was not raised in a church. I had very little understanding of anything in the Bible, although I'd heard of the story of Adam and Eve. And the story I heard was Adam ate an apple and he was condemned by God because God told him to not eat the apple. And so he was thrown out of paradise called Eden. And I'll go into that story in great detail. I've been studying that story for 40 years. And I found it to be an amazing teaching about people. You can learn a lot from studying the story of Eden. But what I wanted to do is, first thing, if you look at the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So, in the beginning, God created something that is the basic structure of humanity and of all creation. And this is why I would love to have people in front of me, because I'd ask the question, what do you think is the basic structure of creation? One word. Time. God creates time. In the beginning, He created all things. And I'm very much a firm believer in timelines. Timelines can teach you a lot. So at some point, let's say we start here, and here is creation. The clock started ticking. And we're going along. At some point, the Bible says that time will end. Now, this is a Christian teaching. When I believed in reincarnation, there was no end. And time had no beginning other than what's called the Big Bang. Bam. We don't know how that happened, but in reincarnation, it begins. Creation, you and I, all things, bam, it begins. There's a term in reincarnation called samsara. Let me put it over here. Samsara. That's the term for the infinite cycle of birth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death. Who believes this? The most prominent religious cult in America, and they would be very upset since I used the term cult, is Scientology. Scientology has been around since the early 50s. But they focused on evangelizing famous people, actors, actresses. But at the heart of Scientology, they believe that people, say Tom Cruise, has lived millions of lives. And since I believed in reincarnation, I will get into that in a separate video specifically geared toward that particular thing. But time has a beginning in Christianity. Time has an end. Beginning and end. I used to think how unfair it was. Some people would get 100 years, 95 years. And then others, like my youngest brother, would only get 13. When my youngest brother died, I was 27, 28. And I still believed in reincarnation. Now, I didn't tell my mother about this. But of course, I knew from what I believed, my worldview, is he must have done something in a previous life that he had to pay for in this life. So that's why he lost his life the way that he did, is because he had to pay for something called karma. Karma is what you have done in your previous life that you have to pay for in this life. And in reincarnation, you have any number of answers to very difficult theological questions. I'm going to keep going back to time. But I'm going to end right now and pick up time later. I love the Back to the Future movies. And I always ask people, do you remember what the license plate was on the time machine in Back to the Future? You look at it, you'll see it's called Out of Time. Now, when God created time, he is not in time. He created time. So therefore, he can see past, present, and future all at the same time. He knows what's going to happen, and yet he can enter into time if he chooses. Now, there are reasons why he does that. We don't always know why. But thank you for the second lesson, and let me turn it off.